Hello and welcome to the Finance Quarter. I'm Andrew Robertson. On the program today, the office Christmas party. It's meant to be a whole lot of fun, but it can become a legal minefield for the boss. And why economists believe politicians are taking us for a ride with all their huffing and puffing over the budget deficit. But first, interest rates. And while home buyers jumped for joy after the Reserve Bank cut rates on Melbourne Cup Day, there's one large group of people who aren't celebrating. As the ABC's Philip Lasker explains, for retirees who earn their income from the interest on their investments, a rate cut equals a pay cut.
You won't find too many people complaining about lower interest rates, and nobody wants to hear from those that do.
We can live with it. I don't think I need to scrimmage out.
Oh, for me it's bad.
Why?
Because I need the interest.
The Pensioners and Superannuants Association says rate cuts don't really affect low-income pensioners on a full-rate pension. It's worse for those slightly higher up the income ladder with money invested who opt for the safety and stability of bank deposits. They've just received a pay cut.
And you have to make do with less money. Also, it tends to be the case that when interest rates go down, the economy is stimulated, which stimulates inflation, which means higher prices.
The combined impact of weaker lending growth and falling interest rates may take some of the heat out of the deposit market, but there'll be powerful forces moving in the opposite direction.
And I think there'll also be a pressure on the banks to continue to raise an increasing proportion of their funding from retail deposits because of the new liquidity rules that are coming out from Basel and from APRA, particularly around the stable funding requirements, which put a much bigger emphasis on sticky retail deposits as opposed to more hot money, more sort of institutional short-term funding.
Nobody's expecting an exodus from deposits as interest rates fall, because volatility will be a feature of the financial environment for some time, and there is a way to play the market in a falling interest rate environment.
We recommend clients take a laddered approach to cash and fixed income. So what I mean by that is they spread out the maturity profile of their investments, and in that way, even if there is a cut in deposit rates, it'll only be a portion of their income that gets impacted.
For retirees who get their income from interest, in fact all retirees, a sad fact of life is that retirement is the last stage of life. About 140,000 people die every year in Australia, thousands of them unexpectedly who never actually make it to retirement. And that set me thinking. We never know when we're going to end up in here, so we owe it to our loved ones to get our affairs in order. Here's a checklist of some of the things we should do. One of the first things is to make a valid will, so if we do die, our assets go where we want them to. We'll need to appoint an executor to administer the will. Take out a binding nomination on our superannuation to ensure it also goes to the person of our choice. We need adequate life insurance to cover the big bills for our families when we're not there. And if you run a small business, consider key man insurance and also a very clearly defined succession plan. And a couple of points for while we're still alive. Appointing an enduring power of attorney for financial issues and a guardian for health issues will save a lot of grief for our families if we become unable to make decisions for ourselves. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and you may like to get some good advice from a qualified person. While nobody likes the thought of dying, making proper preparations will make life a lot easier for those we leave behind. And now to something that should be a whole lot cheerier. Christmas is just a few weeks away, and if your workplace is like mine, preparations are now well underway for the office Christmas party. But what should be a night of fun and frivolity can turn into a legal minefield for both employers and workers if some simple rules aren't observed. To help us all enjoy our end-of-year celebration, I spoke with leading business lawyer Terry McCabe. Terry, people turn up to the work Christmas party ready to let their hair down and have a good time. But under the law, the work Christmas party is very different to going to a party at, say, your best mate's house. What are the differences and how should they influence your behaviour?
The real essential difference is that there is no doubt that under Australian law, the Christmas party is part of the workplace function. And so it means that all of the rules that apply to the workplace, such as sexual harassment, discrimination, occupational health and safety, also apply to the Christmas party. And so, for example, the employer has an absolute obligation to provide a healthy and safe workplace. That also applies to the Christmas party, which means that the employer must control alcohol, make sure that people can get home safely, and bullying and harassment provisions also apply to the Christmas party, so that the Christmas party is not the case for either the employer or the employee to have saved up that off-risque joke and roll it out at the Christmas party. That should be avoided.
And there's been plenty of litigation that's come out of work Christmas parties.
It's a minefield of litigation, Andrew, and what would surprise a lot of employers is the extent of the employer's obligations if they're not managed properly. An example is where a large national employer had a Christmas party, and staff themselves organised and paid for a hotel room that they went back to after the function, and a female employee went back with some other people, and things happened in the room which other workers complained about, and the court ultimately found that even things happening in the hotel room were still in relation to employment, and that the employer could be liable for those acts. Another recent one was where an employee drank too much at a function and decided that she would intervene in a fight between colleagues, and herself got injured, and the court found that that conduct was still in connection with employment because there hadn't been proper control of the consumption of alcohol at that function.
It makes it hard for the employer, particularly that example you gave of the hotel room where the employer had nothing to do with it, but he's still held liable.
It's true. What the employer can do is to make sure that everything that is reasonable to prevent things happening is done. And that includes, for instance, before the function even begins, reminding staff that the organisation or the company has a discrimination policy, a sexual harassment policy, a bullying policy, an occupational health and safety policy, and that all of those policies still apply to the Christmas function as if the Christmas function was the workplace. The employer should check out the venue, make sure that if it's a club, that there are not too many dark corners that can't be properly supervised. The employer should make sure that staff know the commencement and the finishing time of the function. Probably most importantly, the employer needs a really good alcohol control policy, and this would mean that the employer or manager should themselves try and remain sober so that they can keep an eye and keep control of what's going on. But in relation to the alcohol, which is the seat of almost all of these problems, make sure that staff themselves don't have direct access to alcohol, that the alcohol supply is controlled by a bartender that's familiar with the responsible service of alcohol rules. Make sure there's a good supply of non-alcoholic drinks. Importantly, make sure that there's plenty of food at the venue. And then just keep an eye on staff, and if they are getting out of control, particularly young staff, and clearly are affected by alcohol, make sure that they're stopped from further drinking.
The message I'm hearing from what you've said to me today is that it is a work event and work rules apply.
All of the basic obligations that we owe to each other as employers or employees, which basically come down to treating each other with respect, that those obligations don't stop after dark, that they continue, and they continue through the Christmas function.
Well, Terry, you've given us a lot of good things to reflect on as we prepare for our work Christmas parties. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Andrew.
You'd have to be living under a rock not to be aware of the heated debate around the federal budget. The government seems determined to bring it back to surplus next year, no matter what, while the coalition says if there's a deficit, it will be a sign that Labor can't run the economy. The latest predictions are that the budget will either be slightly in deficit or slightly in surplus, which is why economists believe all the political bloodletting is nonsense.
Whether the federal government has a $3.5 billion surplus or a $2 billion deficit is of no consequence in a $400 billion budget. We're talking about less than 1% of the $400 billion budget.
Now, the whole mantra about the only good budget being a surplus budget was started by Peter Costello when he was Treasurer in the Howard government. The reality is, though, that when an economy starts to show signs of slowing, as ours is now, you actually want the government to spend a bit more to help try and prop it up, which could mean that a deficit in the short term is actually a good thing. Now, speaking of budgets, the biggest item in our personal budget is our house, or for many people, the struggle to buy a house in Australia's currently overheated market. There's lots of talk about a housing bubble which could burst at any moment, but the Reserve Bank is actually quite relaxed about the current situation.
If you do the calculation properly and measure incomes, the ratio of house prices in the city to incomes in the city, it's fine. House prices in the country relative to country incomes are all fine. So I don't think there's a problem there to deal with. At the moment, the housing market is sort of drifting slightly lower. Auction clearance rates are broadly consistent with, stable to slightly falling house prices. I think we've all got used to a situation where, house prices, we regard house price rise as being the norm. That is not necessarily the norm.
Let's hope Rick Battolino is right. Well, that's all for this edition of the Finance Quarter. As always, if you'd like to see any part of the program again, you can find us on the ABC News website. Just go to the business page and click on the Finance Quarter icon. And if you'd like to write to us, don't forget we're on Twitter at the address on your screen now, or you can send us an email to thefinancequarter@your.abc.net.au. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Finance Quarter.